Today I'm going to make a video that I've been putting off for a fairly long time. Today I'm going to share the story of how I started, how I got into board repair, and how I started this business that I've grown. And the way I started is going to differ from a lot of other people because I have gotten started at this much younger than most people have. When I started board repair, or when I started getting interested in this was in, I think, 2016. 2016, I was actually 15 years old, and that was probably one of the biggest obstacles that I had to face when doing this. So in 2016, I remember, on YouTube, and I found a video by Lewis, and I forget which one it was. It was one of the board repair ones where I watched it for like 5 minutes and then, closed it and moved on to something else. But I eventually went back and started watching some of these other videos, and a few of them just kind of, hit home in areas that I needed it. And one of the things was adding more things to the plate in your life, basically. And that was something that 2016, that wasn't the easiest year of my life. There's a few things going on that I'm not really going to talk about on camera, but for the most part, it wasn't a very good year. So I, for one thing I did was got my certification for storm spotting from the National Weather Service, and I did that. That was interesting. And then I decided, you know what, I've know how to build computers and stuff, so I know how to repair desktops. I've repaired a few desktops for people and stuff. So I said, you know what, I'm going to start a computer repair business. I'm going to, offer, desktop repair, laptop repair, like hard drives and RAM and all that stuff, that typically breaks on desktops. So this was around August of 2016 where I decided to do this, and I basically, tried that for a month. I made a business Facebook page and a website, a really, really lousy website. And then after a month, I figured, well, nothing's coming in, so I must have to give up because obviously nothing's going to come in after this. And I remember, I think it was around the end of August, where I was at the hardware store and saw a pair of tweezers, and this reminded me of some of the stuff in Lewis's videos. And I thought to myself, no, I'm not smart enough to do board level repair, so I'm not even gonna attempt that. I remember those specific words I told myself, that you are not smart enough to do board level repair, when I saw the pair of tweezers. Then I think it was around September of 2016 when I started second guessing that and thinking, well, why am I telling myself, why did I say I'm not smart enough to do board level repair when that other people can do it, so why can't I learn? And then at that point, I decided to, get a Radio Shack soldering iron and started practicing on a couple boards. I think before then I actually was messing around with like a Bose Bluetooth speaker or something that was liquid damaged, and just with a soldering iron. And obviously I didn't know what I was doing, so I didn't really do much of it. But it was at that point when it sparked the interest in me. Maybe I can figure out a way to do this. And I remember thinking to myself, well, what if I had, a shop that handled, boards and stuff. And I'll show you guys the picture in a minute when I had that. And I decided, I'm going to try this. I had $250 saved away in the bank, and then another $75 that I earned by working, doing something else. And I decided, I'm going to go on Amazon and I'm going to order one of these cheap, SMD rework stations. It was one of the blower and handle ones. It was pretty lousy, but I decided, I'm going to use the $70 and I'm going to buy one of these things, and I'm going to practice on soldering stuff on boards. So I got that, and I remember I started advertising board level repair in the area, and I got one customer that came in with an iMac that needed a capacitor soldered back on, and this obviously it wasn't the capacitor. I listened to the customer that needed the capacitor. I was able to, they brought their old board, they replaced the board in this thing, and they brought the old board with them and wanted me to transplant the capacitor. And now keep in mind, these are the polytantalum, not the polytantalum, the electrolytic ones that if you heat it, it'll explode when power is applied. So I managed to try, and this is one of these iMac boards, it's like 10 layers or something, and there's no way that's going to come off with the lousy hot air rework station that I had at the time. So I tried, I heated it up, it wouldn't come up, so I'm thinking to myself, well, the customer's out here waiting, and this is when I had my, home office, what do I do? So eventually I got the capacitor up, and it wasn't the whole capacitor package. If you know some of those surface mount capacitors, they have the legs that go into the little package, and those little package have two pins on it that goes on the board. So I got the capacitor up, and I remember trying to solder it back on, and I remember my huge Radio Shack iron with a huge tip, and I couldn't fit it between the two other capacitors. So I figured out, how am I going to do this? I figured out a way. I forget what I did. I think I used the hot air again, and the board was dead. It wouldn't turn on. Obviously, it needed something else other than the capacitor, and if it did turn on, the capacitor probably would have exploded. But in other words, I did that, and I realized, okay, this Radio Shack iron isn't going to work. So I had the $200 they had, and I bought a Hakko FX888D. It's the one that has the sleeve over tip, and I used that, and that was a huge difference. And pretty much at that point, I just practiced soldering stuff on boards. I didn't really get any repairs in. Then I think January of 2017 was my first real repair, which was a mail-in that I got. I think I had board repair listings on eBay, which do not do that. So this was a customer that had the Apple Store tell them that they needed a new logic board and a new battery and all of this. And I remember getting the board, and I was unaware that MacBook Airs used Pentalobe 2 bit, so I tried to take it out with the Torx and ended up stripping one of the screws in the bottom case. But it happens. I had no idea what I was doing really. So I went through the board, and at this point I remember I bought the 888D and then a few other things, and I had one of those little digital USB microscopes, that has about an inch of working distance, and it's not really going to be much good for board repair by any means. And what was I going to say? I went through the whole board. There was no liquid damage or anything, and then I had to actually post on Lewis's forum that about what the issue was, and it ended up being the trackpad cable. Trackpad cable and trackpad, I actually cleaned the trackpad cable, and the connector on the trackpad actually went up in smoke. So I replaced the top cover and all that, and the thing worked, and that was my first repair. From January to May, I didn't get any repairs in 2017. And then I went around to local shops, and with the local shops, finally I got one that had boards for me to fix, and it was A1278 that was it was a customer's, I believe. They would send me some of the ones they had in the back, but it was a customer's. There was a 1278 that would quarter fan spin, so I got it, took it back to repair, took off the bottom case, and I remember thinking to myself, well, what do I do now? What is this? This is different from the MacBook Air I've seen. I don't really know how to take this apart. So eventually I figured it out. I took it apart, and then next thing that came up is, now what? I have the board out. It doesn't work. What do I do now? So I started poking around, and at this point, I didn't really know too much about the boards, but I eventually figured out that the resistance to ground was low on BP Bus G3 Hot, and the ISL was getting burning hot. So I poked around, I measured current sensing, and I found that the current sensing on the ISL, it was either pin 17 or 18 or 27, 28, I don't know. It was whatever one's for the charger, because it would work off of a charged battery. Those resistors were blown, so I replaced those resistors and the ISL, and it worked. I turned it on, it didn't quarter fan spin, it turned on normally, it worked normally. At that point, it's like, okay, maybe I can do this. Maybe with board level repair, I just fixed this one, and this was pretty much my first one. Maybe I could do more of these. So I returned it. They gave me two more, and I eventually fixed those two. And at this point, I was feeling a lot more confident, and now I had a little bit more money, so I bought a Amscope SE400. This was a huge leap from the piece of junk little digital microscope. And if any of you have a digital microscope and you're thinking to yourself, oh, well, this is just fine, I can see the board just fine, you're 100% wrong. That thing, I couldn't tell the difference between a resistor and the board, because the resistor was the same color of the board, and that thing was so lousy it wouldn't even pick up the depth of the resistor, so it was really, really hard to work with. And after that was leaps and bounds better, and it was pretty much just, at that point, getting a few repairs in local shops. I didn't really get any nationally. I got a couple nationally, but it wasn't that much. And then it was, at that point, I think it was around, what was it, July or something, I think around July, maybe August of 2017, I started the MacBook support group. At this point, I knew a bit about the boards. I, still wasn't the best at them. I had knowledge of them just from watching videos and stuff where I could help people diagnose their boards. So I created that group, and I started getting more and more members, and by answering their questions I started learning more about the boards, how they worked, what issues caused certain faults. So that one support group on Facebook, now it's pretty much just all overfilled with cancer and reflow CPU nonsense. But in a way, that group really helped me get started, because by answering other people's questions, I learned, what components cause different faults on the boards and stuff like that. Then it was, and keep in mind at this time, pretty much I was doing everything I could to hide my age to people, because for one, I would get a lot of, hate about this, saying, oh, you can't do this, you're too young, you're too stupid, you might be scamming people, taking their laptops and stuff. So I really tried to keep that to myself. And it was the conference in iFixit that was in, I think October, no, it was September of 2017. And that conference in a way was a game changer. So that conference was a game changer, as it allowed me to, well, it was, for one, I walked in there and thinking, well, you know what, everyone's going to find out how old I am. They're going to, basically not take me seriously, and, basically not want to talk to me, or, think I'm dumb or something like that. And that actually wasn't the case. Talking to people there, it was actually completely opposite of what I thought people would think. They were more in favor and more, really interested that I'm doing this at how old I was. And I remember Jessa was there, a few other people were there, and I went at iFixit. They have their video recording room where they have some micro soldering equipment, and there was someone that wanted me to look at a board for them. So I went up there and started looking at the board for them. And then I remember Jessa came in the room, and behind Jessa was around 50 people, and I'm at the microscope, and now all these people are expecting me to talk about it. So at that point, I had to talk about what was wrong with the board, and basically go over a little bit of teaching about some of the circuits. And that, from one point, when at that point I was decent in what I knew about board repair. I mean, I wasn't obviously the greatest, but I had some knowledge, that I knew how to fix MacBook boards. So at that point, I had to, speak. That when there's 50 people in the room all looking at you, and you're at the top of the room, you have to say something. You can't just step down and walk away. So I started going over what was wrong with the board. That one had, I think, a dead ISL or something wrong in the PP3V42 circuit or something. I don't remember exactly, but I had to talk about that. And at that point, I did okay. I'm sure it wasn't the best, but I did okay. And a lot of people were, impressed with the knowledge. A lot of people learned some stuff, and after that, it was a lot better off as far as the age, because most people respected me after that. They knew, okay, he knows what he's doing. He's not, he's not trying to scam people. He's not trying to, do this. And after that, more and more, I started getting more and more repairs. More and more people saw the posts about that, or were there. They told other people, and I started getting more repairs in. And it was like, yeah, around December of that year, I started getting, decent amount of repairs in, and that was good. Now this leaves the next problem is I have a tiny office. I had a corner of a room in the house. Now obviously that's not going to work long term. Pretty much at that point, all my business was mail-in from other repair shops. There was a few end-user mail-ins, but for the most part, not many. And then I started thinking about this and realized that local customers, for one, and for one, the city I was in had weird laws that you can't have customers come to your home, even if you have a business license or anything. They just don't allow it, which is pretty screwed up, because you should be able to you should be allowed to have customers come to your home if you're a licensed business. Now that wasn't the case in the city. So at that point, it was like March or something, where I was really thinking, I need an office, I need a store, and there really just wasn't any opportunities presenting themselves. There wasn't any, you know, offices at a decent price that I could afford. There wasn't any open storefronts, and for one, with local, I didn't really have any local customer base yet. Because if someone would call, when you would tell them, oh, well, we're a licensed home-based business. We offer pickup and drop-off. We could come to you and pick it up. They instantly get offended, think you're going to try and rob them or whatever. People are just weird here. Um, so at that point, I realized, okay, I might as not well just focus on local and just push mail-in, which I did. And it just kept getting better and better with picking up more shops, around that time of the year. And then in June, I decided, okay, I have an opportunity. It was with a local repair shop that I do work for, and they offered for me to, rent a portion of their office to run my business out of. So I took that offer. This was in June of 2018, and unfortunately, that didn't work out too well. And that, I stayed there for around 2 months, and then I decided, what's stopping me? Why can't I have my own repair shop? Why do I need to, not take this leap? And why do I think I need to, why can't I support my own storefront? So when that didn't work out as well as I expected it to with the other office in another shop, I started looking and I found the location that I'm in now. And I'm honestly glad that at the other shop it didn't work out too well, because it wouldn't have pushed me to find the location that I'm in now. And at that point, in earlier the year, I was decent with board repair. I was able to help people very proficiently over the internet and stuff like that. So I was at the point where I could pretty much, if I couldn't fix it at this point, nobody could fix it. And then I found the location. When that went wrong, I'm not going to go into details, but it wasn't necessarily that bad. It just didn't work out as planned. So I found this place. So with this location that I found, it's for one in a pretty decent part of town. There's a pretty good population. It tends to be a higher class part of town than the other place. The other place was kind of in a fairly bad area where I would have to worry about, is someone going to break through these windows and take my stuff? And it just wasn't the place for long term, and I came to realize that. So this place is actually in a really nice little area, and for what I pay, it's just an excellent spot. And what's also interesting is that since I've had a store, you get more and more customers, not just locally. More and more repair shops, they look at you, and if they see the address, they tend to Google it, and then they see that if you're a home-based business, they'll tend to take their business elsewhere. And keep in mind, this is now having a home-based business it doesn't represent your skill or anything. It's just the fact that people aren't very trusting of it. Sometimes people think it's a scam. Sometimes people assume, well, if they're out of their home, they can't be that good because they must not have that much money if they're still working out of their home. And oftentimes this isn't the case. There's a multitude of reasons why people will stay working out of a home-based business. So being here, it's just, I look back on how I've gotten here and how quick I've gotten here, and I think of the future. It's only getting better as time goes on. I've become pretty good at board repair, at least I think so. I mean, I'd say my success rate is probably around 92 to 95%, and only gets better. Like I said, I now have a paid support form where I answer questions and I pay someone else to answer questions, and I look forward to what the future brings. It seems to only be getting better. I seem to be getting better at repair, and I think the future is going to look good. So I'm going to show you guys some pictures of basically my workbench, how I started, how far I've came, maybe a few pictures of this office, and I'll show you guys right now. So let's have a look here. Okay, so this picture is of my desk when I first started becoming interested in board repair. I had a Bluetooth speaker that was liquid damaged that I was cleaning, and don't know what I was doing with this iron, but I was messing with something on there. Obviously it didn't work, but it was at this point, this picture, I remember thinking, well, what if I had, I think this was at the time where I had where I was thinking of just repairing desktops and stuff. But at this point, I was thinking, maybe I can fix logic boards, and what if I had a business where I handled a bunch of these things, and this was just a point where it pretty much inspired me to do better. And then we have this picture after I got started a little bit, where I had my 888D as well as my hot air station, and this not this come on. It was this little digital microscope that I had up on a stand so I could see the board, and this thing was terrible. I mean, it allowed me to, I guess I will give it one thing, it did allow me to fix my first two boards to be able to afford the SC400, and that's what I did. I used this thing and fixed two of them, and then I go to this. Now, there were some earlier pictures of this. This is after, a little while after I had it quick at this point and more repairs in, but I was able to get the SE400 and upgrade my setup a little bit, and this is at the point where this is where I started. This was this crowded little corner of this room that was filled with cords and just jam packed, and it was just it was really hard to work out of. This is when I started getting a little bit busier, and I had a bunch of MacBooks to work on. Then here is pile of mail-in boxes that I would get. Sometimes it would be like this every day, where I would just pile them up in a corner, and it would be this giant mess that was terrible. And being in this, it just frustrated me because I couldn't stand the mess. And that was one of the things that motivated me to do better. And then this was the conference here, and this is the position that I was forced to kind of teach in. Not forced, but it was an enjoyable experience, and that was one of the things that allowed me to get more repairs in. And this was one of the last pictures I took of my office at the home. This was, I was running out of workspace, so I had to get another little bench, and I had this like little table with the dartboard storage in, and it was just a really cramped space to work out of. At this point, I was getting a lot of repairs in. I knew what I was doing, and I had better equipment at that stage. And then this was my first storefront. Not a storefront, but it was an office in another store. And this was actually a pretty decent size space. I enjoyed working out of this, and I sort of did, but this was my main concern, was someone was going to break out of these windows or either drive through these windows because of where it was at. But this location ended up not working out too well, so I moved. This was again another picture of my soldering station and the workbenches. And then in August of 2018, I got this place. This is where I'm currently located, and I thought, this is a nice little store. It's in a pretty decent area. I have 500 square feet, so it's not bad. A few pictures of the inside. For the most part, it's a decent store. And that's my current station that I work out of. This video, of course, was condensed a bit. There was a lot that I kind of just jammed into it, so it's not a whole 2-hour video of me talking about every little thing that I've grown from. But yeah, if you're thinking of doing board repair, if there's a goal that you're just telling yourself that you can't do it, that you're just that you're to insert complaint or excuse. Basically, it's an excuse. Don't give yourself excuses. If there's something that you want to do, go out there and do it. Try. The worst that's going to happen is that you will fail at it, and then you get back up and try for something else. If you don't go ahead and do it, then you'll never know if you're going to succeed at it, and you could be putting off this opportunity. I see a lot of people that say, well, I'm learning, I'm working here or doing this, I'm just learning, and I don't think I know how to do this stuff. And what I want you to think about is, like what I said in earlier in the video, when I got my first MacBook in, I had no idea what I was doing, but I found a way to fix it. I put my mind to it, I figured out a way to fix it, and I fixed it. Pretty much the only way you're going to learn is if you do it. If you're putting yourself off and saying that, I can't do it, I can't start accepting repairs until I know more, you're usually not going to get there. And another word of advice is, you might be thinking, well, competition, there's so many places that do that around here, and yeah, there is here too. But you know what? I gave it a shot, and now pretty much I'm the only one that does board repair in this area. Um, so just give it a shot, and when you're learning, you're going to be very intimidated by other places that have, especially if you're starting out of a home. You're going to feel really intimidated by competitors around here, and don't. Be the best at what you do, and you don't have to worry about competitors at all. Don't. I see a lot of places that a lot of people think, oh, I'm gonna go compete against this guy, and I'm gonna try and run him out of business and do this. Don't do that. People that often do that fail, and I see that from experience. When someone tries to go after one person in competition, they end up falling flat on their face. Don't do that. It's a stupid way of thinking. Go after your own market, be the best at what you do, and you will not have to worry about competition. I speak from experience. I don't worry about competition. I don't care if there's other repair stores that brag about, oh, well, we get more repairs in than you, we do this. I don't care. I am who I am. My shop is who I am. I continue to grow. What is there to worry about? That's just a few thoughts I had, and the story that I felt like sharing today. And I hope you take something from this. And maybe if you're thinking about doing something similar, I suggest you go for it. It's the only way that you're gonna get out of that. Just start, basically. And that's it for today. And I will see you in the next video. I'm gonna start doing more videos, I think, and recording a lot of the repairs I see, because most of the videos I have up there now are pretty lousy, because mainly I tend to do them at night after I fixed everything easy that comes in from the day, and you get videos of the rabbit holes and the nonsense repairs that I get. So I'm going to try and do some pre-recorded videos of some of the repairs I do in the day, and I think it'll be better.